The moment I realized my wife didn't love me anymore wasn't dramatic. There was no screaming, no sobbing, no shattering glass or lipstick-stained collar. It was just her smile. Not the big, public one she wore for family gatherings or posed photos. No, this one was small, private. A half smirk she gave while texting someone across the kitchen island. The kind of smile you only give to someone who knows you. And it wasn't for me. "Who's that?" I asked casually, sipping coffee. Lena didn't even look up. "Just work." That was all. Just work. Like it always was. But something in her tone, it was too smooth. Too easy. I knew that voice. It was the one she used when she was hiding something. When she was already 10 steps ahead in a conversation I hadn't caught up to yet. We'd been married 12 years. 2 kids. A joint mortgage. Matching bathrobes. And I hadn't felt close to her in at least 2 of those years. It wasn't always this way. Lena had been my person. My spark. The kind of woman who lit up a room and pulled everyone into her orbit, especially me. She was a photographer, a gifted one, with a studio downtown and a knack for capturing people's honest moments. I used to be one of those moments. Now, I was background noise. She traveled more lately. Claimed her career had picked up. New clients. Editorial work. A gallery feature she was preparing for. I wanted to believe it. But I'd seen the changes. How she locked her phone screen faster. How she changed her perfume. How she stayed out later and came back smelling faintly of aftershave that wasn't mine. So I did the unthinkable. One night after she fell asleep, I took her phone. Not to spy, at least that's what I told myself, but to prove I was wrong. That it was just paranoia. Except I wasn't. The messages weren't overt. No explicit photos or romantic confessions. Just a name, Casey, and a steady stream of inside jokes, midnight check-ins, and one that stopped me cold. I hate pretending in that house. I stared at the screen until my hands went numb. The next day, she smiled at me like nothing had changed. But it had. Because now I knew the truth. I was no longer her home. And I was about to find out just how far the lies had gone. After reading the message, "I hate pretending in that house," everything about Lena shifted in my eyes. I watched her like someone observing a stranger through a one-way mirror. Every word she said carried weight. Every absence felt intentional. And worst of all, she didn't even seem conflicted. There was no guilt. No hesitation. Just smooth, practiced indifference. She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings. Still helped the kids with their homework. Still posted smiling photos of us on her photography page, Family Sunday. She captioned one, even though she had spent half of that day running errands. I started tracking the gaps. Her studio hours were fuzzy. Some nights, she'd say she had a late shoot or that she was editing at the office. But the photos from those shoots never showed up online, and her car's odometer didn't add up to her stories. So I installed a tracker. I hated myself for it, but I also couldn't sleep without it. The first night it pinged outside a hotel off Route 15. I sat in my car for an hour, just staring at the red dot on my screen. I couldn't go there. Not yet. I wasn't ready to see it in person. But I took screenshots. Saved everything. Began building a timeline. Casey. That was the name in her texts. I didn't know the last name yet, but the messages made one thing clear. This wasn't new. They talked about that weekend in Asheville, the loft, and a restaurant I didn't even know she liked. Her favorite place had always been the Thai spot near our first apartment. Now she was texting someone about rooftop oysters. She had created a whole second life. And the sickest part? She made me a background character in it. The steady, dependable husband who folded laundry and cooked dinner. Who held down the house while she slipped away into a fantasy. But that fantasy had limits. And I was about to become one of them. I started printing. Messages. Locations. Receipts. Photos of her studio door locked when she claimed she was in a session. I bought a folder, labeled it with a single word. Proof. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more. Not for drama. Not even for revenge. But because when this all came crashing down, I wanted to look her in the eyes and give her no space to lie. And I was getting close. Too close. Her world was woven with lies. I was just untangling the threads. Casey had started as just a name in her phone. But now, he had a shape. A face. A life. It started when I found a printed receipt in her car folded between napkins from a fast food run. Dinner for 2 at a wine bar downtown. The server's name, the date, and at the bottom, "See you next week, Casey." I drove there the next evening and sat outside in my car, engine off, watching. At 7:13 p.m., Lena arrived. She wore the same gray coat she told me she never liked anymore. The one I'd bought her for our 10th anniversary. Her hair was curled. She walked like she belonged there. Confident. Alive. At 7:15, he appeared. Casey. He looked normal. Not some Hollywood fantasy or muscle cliché. Just a man in his mid-30s. Clean-shaven. Fitted jacket. He greeted her with a hug, one hand resting on her lower back just a moment too long. It was enough. I snapped a few photos. Not to publish. Not even to show anyone else. Just to remind myself this wasn't a nightmare I made up. It was real. They went inside. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Instead, I drove home to silence. When she walked through the door hours later, Lena smelled like cinnamon and wine. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "Sorry I missed dinner. The client rescheduled last minute." I nodded and said, "All good." She smiled, completely unaware that I'd watched her lie to my face, twice in one sentence. That night, after she fell asleep, I did more digging. I found Casey's photography business online. A competitor, technically. I recognized his name from a few wedding industry networking events. They'd done work at the same venues. He even liked her posts on Instagram going back 2 years. This wasn't new. This wasn't a mistake. This was a full-fledged affair wrapped in hashtags and perfectly filtered images. And suddenly, I realized I had been helping her build it, sharing her posts, encouraging her collaborations, supporting her weekends away for portfolio growth. She'd used my trust as fuel for her betrayal. I stared at the ceiling that night, the room feeling smaller with every breath. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It was about the kind of deception that changes the shape of a person. I didn't know who Lena was anymore, but I was determined to introduce her to me, the version she never expected to show up. The next few weeks were a test of endurance. I woke up beside her every day knowing she was in love with someone else. Or, at the very least, obsessed enough to risk everything we'd built. Yet she smiled, kissed the kids, made coffee, called me babe, like nothing had changed. But I had changed. I couldn't look at her without wondering how many of our memories were real. How many times she'd sat across from me at dinner thinking of him. How many photos she'd taken of me with the kids, only to text them to Casey as if we were characters in her double life. And the worst part? She seemed happy. She hummed in the kitchen again, played music while she edited. She was glowing, like cheating on me had awakened something inside her. Maybe it had. Maybe that was the most gutting truth of all. The day before our daughter's piano recital, I picked up Lena's laptop charger from the studio while she was out. She'd asked me to drop it off later. Said she forgot it in the rush to meet a corporate headshot client. She never expected me to enter the studio, but I had a key. The place was clean, tidy, almost too perfect. A curated backdrop for the lies she was living. I walked past the camera setup, past the prints hanging on the wall, and stopped at her desk. A drawer was slightly open. Inside, a journal. I didn't touch it. I wasn't going to cross that line. But a photo tucked between the pages caught my eye. It was of her and Casey. Not kissing. Not scandalous. Just a candid moment, clearly taken by someone else. Him adjusting her scarf, her laughing, hands in her pockets. She looked free, and that's when I broke. Not with rage. Not with screaming. With heartbreak. Because I remembered that laugh. I used to be the reason for it. And now I was the man she lied to in order to preserve it. That night, at the recital, she clapped louder than anyone. Filmed our daughter on her phone. Sat beside me as if the world hadn't shifted. I looked at her and saw everything I no longer recognized. The person I fell in love with? Gone. Replaced by someone capable of smiling through betrayal. But I didn't flinch. I didn't confront her. Because now I had more than enough. And soon, so would everyone else. After the recital, something inside me hardened. I had crossed the line between confusion and clarity. The part of me that once hoped for an explanation, maybe even a confession, was gone. Now, I wasn't just collecting evidence. I was building a strategy. Lena kept slipping. The better she got at lying, the more casual she became. And casual people make mistakes. Her first mistake came in the form of a memory card. She left it on the kitchen counter, half slid under a magazine. Probably thought it was blank. But the label said, Loft Session, Edits Pending. And I recognized the name from her calendar. She had marked it as a corporate shoot. I popped it into my laptop late that night. Most of the files were what I expected, staged headshots, natural light portraits. Then came the folder labeled Private. I hesitated. For a moment, I wondered if it was another couple's shoot, something steamy for clients wanting to feel bold and empowered. It wasn't. The first photo showed Lena in front of a brick wall, her legs wrapped around Casey's waist. Another showed her laughing with her arms around his neck, her head thrown back the way she used to laugh at my terrible impressions. And then there was a video, just 37 seconds long. Enough to kill a marriage. They weren't careful. They weren't secretive. They were comfortable, like this was routine, like this was theirs. It hit me then. She wasn't trapped in something. She wasn't scared. She wasn't confused. She was happy. She had chosen this. She had created a space for them where I was never meant to exist. I copied the files to a drive and labeled it Exhibit A, not because I wanted to use it in court, yet, but because I needed to remind myself that I wasn't insane, that this was real, that no matter how warm her smile, how gentle her voice, this was who she'd become. The next day, she kissed me on the forehead before running out to consult with a wedding client. Same lipstick, same hair, same lie, but I didn't stop her. I just watched her walk out the door with the knowledge that I now held more truth in my pocket than she had ever spoken in our bed. And soon, she'd find out how sharp truth could be when used with precision. The deeper I went, the less Lena felt like a person I'd married and more like a stranger I was living with under a ceasefire. I watched her in the small moments. The way she smiled when her phone buzzed. The way she adjusted her posture before taking a call in the hallway. How she never let her phone out of sight, even in the shower. One night, while she was asleep, I placed a voice recorder in her car. Just a small device beneath the passenger seat. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the real Lena only existed in spaces where I didn't. I retrieved it 4 days later. When I sat down to listen, my hands trembled. The first 2 hours were nothing but background music, idle city noise. Then came her voice, light, excited, nervous in that teenage way I hadn't heard from her in years. She was on a call. With him. He asked if I could move my meeting. I told him I'd try, but honestly, I'd rather be with you. Silence. Then laughter. More talking. More planning. And then she said it. I've been thinking about how to tell him. But the house, the kids, the finances, it's messy. He still trusts me too much. I need to figure out the cleanest way to leave. I stopped the recording. Not because I was done listening. Because I didn't want to hear her planning my exit from the life I'd built for us. She didn't want to tell me the truth. She wanted to manage the truth. To guide her own exit like she was the director of a film, and I was the dull supporting actor she decided to cut halfway through the plot. But what she didn't realize, I'd already seen the third act, and I wasn't going to let her write the ending. That night, I moved more money from our joint account into a private trust under the kids' names. Legally shielded. Irrevocable. She could try to take pieces of the life we built, but she wouldn't take them. And with every click of my mouse, every document filed, every password reset, I was reclaiming what she thought I would never see coming. The static had cleared, and beneath it, a whisper of war. There's a strange peace that settles over you when you've stopped hoping. I no longer wished for answers. I wasn't waiting for Lena to wake up in a storm of guilt or come clean in a burst of late-night tears. I had passed the point of doubt. Now, every smile from her felt like a ticking clock, 1 second closer to detonation. She still played her role flawlessly. She helped the kids with homework, volunteered at the school, posted curated photos of sunsets and coffee cups with captions like, "So grateful for these small moments." Small moments, built on layers of lies. I had nearly everything I needed. Audio, video, financial records, messages, timelines. I knew their routine, where they met, how long, what aliases they used for hotel reservations. I even knew which friend she lied to for cover. But still I waited. Because power wasn't in the knowing. It was in the timing. The final straw came on a Saturday. We had planned a movie night with the kids, something Lena insisted we do, to keep the tradition alive. She said she needed to stop by the studio first, just for an hour. She kissed our daughter on the forehead and promised she'd bring snacks. She never came home. I tracked her phone. She wasn't at the studio. She was at Casey's loft. I stared at the screen, the blue dot pulsing against a map I knew too well. At some point, I stopped feeling pain. I stopped wondering how she could do this. I stopped asking what I did wrong. Because none of this was about me. This was about her. Her need to be worshipped. Her addiction to escape. Her ability to turn love into leverage. And now, the leverage was mine. The next morning, she returned with bagels and an apology about how her session ran late. She blamed traffic. She blamed a client who wouldn't stop talking. And she smiled the whole time like nothing in the world was cracking under her feet. I smiled back. Not because I believed her. Because I knew something she didn't. In exactly 3 weeks, she'd be the guest of honor at a private gallery opening hosted by the city's art council. Her name already printed on the banners. Her photos already mounted on the walls. She'd invited family, friends, clients, the press. It would be her perfect night. And it would be the one where her mask slipped in front of everyone. I wasn't planning a confrontation. I was planning an exposure. The invitation came in glossy cardstock, tucked inside a rose gold envelope like it was announcing a royal wedding. Lena handed it to me over breakfast with an expectant smile. "My first solo feature," she said, voice light. "Can you believe it?" I nodded. "You've worked hard." She beamed and kissed my cheek, proud of the image she thought I still believed in. But in truth, I already had a copy of the invitation. I had pulled it from her laptop weeks ago, when I discovered the file saved as Press Gala Final. Casey confirmed. That was the part she didn't say aloud. He'd be there. Not as her date. That would be too obvious. But as her industry connection, the quiet collaborator she name-dropped at photography workshops, the one who helped her develop her voice. What she didn't know was how many others I had invited, too. People from her world. Her curated circle. The couple she photographed. The gallery director she once charmed at a networking event. Her old college roommate who once confided to me that Lena only loves herself and reflections. And I wasn't bringing scandal. I was bringing clarity. I spent nights preparing the final showcase, not hers, but mine. A flash drive with a polished, time-stamped presentation. Not grotesque. Not petty. Just the truth. Photos, voice clips, timelines, and a single quote. I hate pretending in that house. The truth didn't need embellishment. It only needed a stage. As the gala approached, Lena became giddy. She prepped outfits, ordered prints, practiced her opening remarks in front of our bedroom mirror, where I watched from the bed, pretending to scroll my phone while memorizing every false breath. You think I should open with a joke? She asked one night. I looked up. Maybe just be yourself. She grinned. That's the plan. But herself had become a performance. And her final curtain was drawing close. The night before the gala, I stood in our quiet living room after everyone had gone to sleep. I stared at the invitation again. I ran my finger across the gold embossed letters. And then I whispered to no one in particular. They won't clap at the end, Lena. They'll finally see what I've been living with. The night before the gala, Lena was radiant. She twirled in front of the mirror in a long emerald green dress, the kind of piece that draws breath in a room. The kind of dress you don't wear if you plan to blend in. You like it? She asked, running a hand through her hair. It's perfect, I said. And it was. Perfect for the unveiling. That night, she buzzed with nervous energy, pacing the bedroom, adjusting her speech. She'd written it out in her journal. I'd already read it. Full of gratitude, artistry, and phrases like authentic storytelling and honoring the truth. Irony, dressed in satin. She practiced names to thank. Her family, her mentor, the man who helped her rediscover her creative voice, though she didn't say his name out loud. Casey. He was on the guest list, confirmed. She was planning to thank him, and that made everything easier. The next morning, I called Ben, my attorney, and gave him the final okay. The documents were ready. Divorce petition, financial statements, custody requests. We wouldn't send them yet. Not until the world saw who Lena really was. I spent that day in quiet preparation. I dropped the kids at my sister's house, telling them we were having a grown-up night. They didn't question it. Lena kissed them goodbye like any normal day, as if she didn't know she was walking into her own unmasking. The truth was, part of me still hurt. I looked at her that afternoon, the curve of her smile as she picked earrings, the way she hummed when she was nervous. And I remembered who she used to be before Casey, before the lies, before the cold shell wrapped around her love. But pain doesn't always beg for justice. Sometimes, it just wants to be seen. And tomorrow, that's exactly what would happen. I loaded the flash drive. I confirmed the projector settings with the gallery assistant. I ensured the transitions were smooth, the timestamps bold, the audio clean. Then I printed my own version of her invitation. On the back, I wrote 3 words. Let's stop pretending. I placed it inside my suit jacket. Tomorrow, Lena would stand in front of everyone she deceived, and behind her, the screen would flicker to life. Not with art, but with the truth. The gallery buzzed with light chatter and champagne clinks as guests filtered in. The walls were lined with Lena's work, romanticized cityscapes, candid couple portraits, sunlit family shoots. Photographs of love, honesty, connection. The irony wasn't lost on me. She floated through the room like a curated dream, shaking hands, laughing at just the right volume, gently touching arms as she greeted familiar faces. Everyone loved her. She knew exactly how to shine under track lighting. And Casey? He arrived 30 minutes in. Alone. Confident. Wearing a navy suit and the smug look of a man who thought he was getting away with it. They didn't touch. They didn't have to. Their eye contact said everything. He lingered near the refreshments while Lena introduced her emotive pieces to the local arts committee, pitching herself as a vessel of vulnerability. I smiled from the corner of the room, sipping ginger ale. Because tonight, I was the storyteller. I made brief rounds, shaking hands with people I recognized, some who once asked us to babysit, others who'd hired Lena for family portraits, even a few of her friends who'd smiled at me over dinners while knowing she wasn't mine anymore. I wasn't angry at them. They were just extras in a story they didn't realize was fiction. At 8:10 p.m., The director took the mic and welcomed everyone to the show. Lena stepped forward to applause. She looked like a goddess in front of her work, graceful, elegant, composed. She began her speech. "Thank you all so much for coming tonight. This collection is deeply personal. Each image here reflects honesty, relationships, trust." That was my cue. I nodded to the gallery assistant by the tech table. She tapped the key. The screen behind Lena flickered. At first, people thought it was part of the presentation. Then, her words began to echo, "I hate pretending in that house." The room fell silent. Photo after photo rolled across the screen, not her official collection, but the private ones. Stolen glances. Hotel doorways. A time-stamped shot of her and Casey at the beach when she claimed to be visiting her aunt. People gasped. A few turned away. Lena froze. "Stop," she whispered to the tech. "Cut it off. Cut it." But it kept going. The final image was of our family. Me, Lena, and the kids. One of the ones she had taken herself. Across it was written, in soft white text, "Not every photograph tells the truth." Silence. Then the tech assistant powered down the projector. No applause. No closing remarks. Lena stood trembling. Casey had already slipped out the side door. I looked her in the eyes as I walked past and whispered, "That was your masterpiece." She didn't come home that night. I didn't expect her to. The gallery had emptied in stunned silence. No one said a word to her as she stood frozen at the podium. The people she had curated for years, clients, colleagues, friends who admired her from filtered distances, had seen behind the curtain. And there was nothing left to clap for. I left before she did. Walked past her like a guest, not a husband. Outside, the air was brisk. The kind that wakes you up from dreams you didn't realize had turned into nightmares. At home, I poured a drink and sat on the couch beneath our wedding photo. I didn't cry. I'd done that already. Instead, I listened. To the silence. To the absence. And to the breath I didn't know I'd been holding for months. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Lena, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you could be this cruel." I stared at the message for a long time before typing. "Me, you lied for 2 years. I just turned on the lights." No response. She tried again the next morning. A call this time. I didn't answer. Instead, I dropped the kids off at school and met with Ben. The papers were ready, clean, thorough, weighted with truth. Full custody motion included. Asset freeze pending review. A copy of the flash drive submitted to our file. "I want this done before the month ends," I told him. He nodded. "She doesn't have a legal leg to stand on." Afterward, I drove past the studio. Her car was gone. The sign in the window, "By appointment only," had been flipped to "Closed indefinitely." Good. Let the echoes settle. Back at home, I started removing things. Her photo albums. The framed picture of her and Casey's favorite mountain getaway, one she claimed she'd visited for landscape inspiration. I took it down with calm hands. When the kids came home, I made dinner. We played board games. We laughed. They didn't ask about her. Not yet. But I knew that day would come. And I'd be ready. Because the truth, when spoken at the right time, doesn't just destroy illusions. It protects what matters. And that was the only thing left to do. In the quiet that followed the gallery night, Lena disappeared. She didn't show up at the house. Didn't text again. Her phone stopped ringing after 3 unanswered calls. No social media updates. Her studio page was deactivated, her professional site pulled down. She vanished. But the fallout didn't. I received messages from friends, people who were at the gala, or heard about it within hours. Some expressed shock. Others just said, "I had no idea." One of her close colleagues sent a single-line email. She fooled all of us. Even her parents, who'd always seen me as the quiet one, reached out. Her mother, voice trembling, asked me if the photos were real. I said yes. She hung up. For the first time in weeks, I had room to breathe. But breathing didn't mean healing. That came slower. Some nights, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. Other nights, I wrote letters to Lena that I never intended to send. Letters filled with questions I already knew the answers to. Did you ever plan to tell me? Were you going to let our children grow up thinking this was love? When you smiled at me in those photos, were you already gone? I wrote until the anger softened, and all that remained was the residue of betrayal. The kids were adjusting better than I expected. Riley stopped asking when Mom was coming home. Milo clung to my side more than usual, but he laughed again, and that was enough for me. One afternoon, Riley came home with a drawing, a family portrait. Me in the middle, her on one side, Milo on the other. No Lena. I didn't ask. She didn't explain. That night, I filed the custody motion. Ben said Lena hadn't responded to the original petition. She was avoiding service, but the evidence gave us leverage. With what we've submitted, he said, the court will likely rule in your favor by default. I thanked him and hung up. Then I looked around the house. The home we built. It didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It felt like a foundation. And now I was ready to rebuild without ghosts in the walls. A week passed. Then two. Still no sign of her. Lena had gone underground, as if removing herself from the spotlight would somehow erase what had happened. But the damage lingered, visible in the questions from clients who canceled sessions, in the muttered whispers I overheard at the grocery store, in the narrowed eyes of her former friends who now looked at me with quiet apology. But I didn't want apologies. I wanted closure. One afternoon, I walked into our storage closet and pulled out the old photo boxes. Years of our life cataloged in images. Weddings, birthdays, beach vacations, Sunday pancakes. I sifted through them slowly. In some, Lena was beaming. In others, I noticed it for the first time, the way her eyes weren't looking at the camera. The way her body leaned slightly away from me in photos we had framed. The way I always smiled wider. I took down every picture of her from the walls. Not out of hatred, but because I needed space for the truth. Riley came downstairs as I packed them away. Are we throwing those away? She asked. No, I said. Just putting them somewhere else. She nodded, thought for a moment, then added, can we hang the one of us at the lake instead? Of course, I said. That one's real. Later that evening, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Just my name, handwritten in neat, familiar script. Inside, a letter. I don't know how to fix what I broke. Maybe I never will. I lied to everyone, but mostly to myself. I thought I could have both lives. That I deserved to be loved the way Casey made me feel. But all I did was destroy the one person who truly saw me. You. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not asking for it. I just wanted you to know, I see what I've done now. I'll stay away unless the kids ask for me. I won't fight you on anything. You were always the better parent. The better person. Lena. I read it twice. Then I folded it and put it back in the envelope. It didn't change anything. But it acknowledged something she had avoided for too long, the truth. The next morning, I mailed the final paperwork. No confrontation. No final words. Just a signature. And with it, the last chapter she would ever write in our story. The court date arrived on a Tuesday, gray skies, light drizzle, the kind of weather that asks for closure. I wore a simple black suit. Not because I wanted to make a statement, but because I wanted to feel clean. Ready. Final. Then met me outside the courthouse. She didn't file any counterclaims, he said. No custody challenge. No spousal support request. Nothing. She's surrendering? I asked. He nodded. Silence is a form of surrender too. Inside, the courtroom felt smaller than I expected. No jury. Just a judge, a clerk, a half-dozen other people waiting for their own stories to end. Lena was not present. Her attorney was, though tired-looking, briefcase in hand, flipping through paperwork with mechanical detachment. The hearing was swift. Then stood, presented our case. The judge flipped through the evidence, glanced at the petition, looked at me. You're seeking sole physical and legal custody? Yes, Your Honor. No objection from the respondent? None, her attorney confirmed. And there's an asset separation agreement already signed? Yes, Your Honor. The judge paused, then looked me in the eyes. You've been through a lot, Mr. Harris. I gave a single nod. Yes, Your Honor. Well, he said, tapping his pen once, you've handled it with restraint and clarity. Petition approved. Custody granted. Divorce finalized. Just like that, it was done. No gavel bang. No dramatic music. Just the rustle of papers and the low hum of a system doing what it was designed to do. Outside the courtroom, I stood beneath the overhang, watching rain drip from the edges of the roof. Not a storm, just a steady reminder that something had ended. I texted my sister to let her know I was on the way to pick up the kids. Then I pulled out my phone and deleted Lena's contact. Her number, her email, even the old voicemail I used to listen to when we first dated, gone. No fire. No fury. Just freedom. And the strange, quiet sense of walking away from a chapter one thought would be my forever. But the story wasn't over. Because in the shadows of her betrayal, I had planted something else. Something sharp. Something calculated. And it was time for him to feel it. Casey never saw it coming. While Lena was vanishing from the life she'd built, Casey was still coasting through his. He had slipped out of the gallery unnoticed, likely assuming he'd escaped the wreckage. After all, there was no confrontation. No police. No fallout. But his mistake was believing the story ended with her. He didn't realize I had been watching him too. Tracking more than hotel visits and text messages. I had traced the payments Lena made to him, small, suspicious deposits from our joint business account labeled Creative Consulting. He had billed her for photography mentorships, even though they weren't affiliated on paper. But the IRS doesn't care about fake mentorships, especially when you don't report them. I compiled a report. Every fake invoice, every deposit, every date and time that coincided with trips they took together, lodgings paid through the business, transportation billed under client relations. I sent it to a friend who worked in compliance. A week later, Casey received a notice from the state's tax authority. Audits were incoming. So was an ethics review from the Photography Association he so proudly flaunted on his website. But that was just part one. Part two came when I reached out to his clients. Not anonymously, by name. I sent messages with links to screenshots of his messages to Lena. Dates that matched weddings he photographed. One bride, whose ceremony he left early due to a migraine, saw that he was photographed at a mountain Airbnb that very same evening shirtless in one of Lena's Instagram stories, which she'd accidentally left public weeks ago. He lost that client. Then two more. Then his agency quietly dropped him. He called me once. I let it go to voicemail. His voice, so confident in the background of those secret videos, now cracked and panicked. You made your point. Whatever this is, just stop. You've won. But this wasn't about winning. It was about truth. About accountability. He had played with a married woman, helped her destroy a family, and thought he could walk away untouched. But some ghosts follow you. Especially when they know exactly where you work, who you lied to, and what you buried. Lena wrecked her home. Casey helped her burn it. I simply made sure the smoke followed him back to his. 3 months after the dust settled, life looked different, but it was mine again. The house was quieter, lighter. Not because the furniture changed or the paint was new, but because there were no lies echoing in the walls anymore. Just bedtime stories, spilled juice, morning cartoons. Laughter that didn't feel like a cover for something darker. The kids adjusted with grace. Riley stopped drawing our family as 4. She started drawing us as 3, with a dog she said she'd name Chance, whenever we were ready. Milo, still too young to understand it all, just clung tighter and asked fewer questions. When Lena tried to call one last time, I let it ring. Then I blocked her. She honored the custody ruling. No fight. Just occasional emails through her lawyer, relayed as sterilely as possible. No more late night, please. No more guilt tripping. It was over. Truly over. And Casey? He faded. The last I heard, he'd moved 3 cities away, trying to start over. Word in the wedding circuit was that his bookings dried up. His name became a warning, not a referral. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I just noted it, like closing the final tab on a browser filled with bad memories. One evening, I found the envelope I'd kept hidden, the letter Lena wrote me in the early days of our marriage. Back when everything was new and pure and filled with dreams we hadn't yet betrayed. I read it one last time. Then I burned it. Not out of hatred. Out of release. Because real revenge isn't destruction. It's reclamation. Of time. Of self. Of peace. I rebuilt the kids' rooms. Took down what didn't belong anymore. Framed their drawings instead of old wedding photos. We adopted a dog, yes, named Chance. And one day, while walking him with Riley, she said, "You're smiling more lately." "Yeah?" I asked. "Yeah," she nodded. "It's nice. You used to look tired." I said. But not anymore. That night, as the kids slept and the dog snored at my feet, I sat down to write a new letter, not to Lena, not to Casey, to myself. A reminder that I had walked through betrayal, fire, humiliation, and still stood. Stronger, quieter, and finally, free.